Well, hello there, and thank you for tuning in to the Shameless Sex Podcast. I'm Amy, sex educator, somatic sex and relationship coach, and sex shop owner.
And I'm April, VP of an international high-end pleasure product company and boss queen sex toy mogul. We're best friends who make our own rules about who we are as sexual beings.
With everything from how to be a badass in the bedroom, to pussy praising, to top tips for bringing your relationship to the next level, we have something just for you.
So sit back, relax,
and enjoy the show. Don't forget to head on over to our website at shamelesssex.com for more. And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use coupon code SHAMELESSPP in all caps at purepleasureshop.com.
Well, hello there, everyone.
Hey, y'all.
We are live from Salt Lake City again.
I know, we love Salt Lake City, and Salt Lake City loves us.
Did we record in Salt Lake City?
We have.
Okay.
In May, when we were here in May. They really love. We had like fans last night when we were out we went to a Christmas party, and people kept coming up to us being like, "We listen to your podcast. We love you. We didn't know you were going to be here in person."
Yeah, we love you, fans. Yeah, we went to a holiday party for a wonderful store called Blue Boutique, which we'll be doing some plugs for Blue Boutique later on in future episodes. But we had a really fun time.
And Amy was pitching all the Mormon taxi drivers. I don't know if they were Mormon, but they were like, she's like, "Do you know about shameless sex?" When we were driving in the Uber, I was like, "Nice, Amy. Nice plug."
Yeah, I don't know how much they like me, but it's cool. Trying to share the good word of shameless sex. So this episode, we're gonna go all over the place here, but we have another guest. We have so many guests, and it's so exciting. This guest is extra special. I think all guests are extra special, but this one's extra special because this is a really special human that I love dearly. But before I intro them, I would like to announce that we're doing a survey, and the survey is very important to us because we want to know who we are speaking to. We kind of have an idea, but we want to know who you are, where you're from, how you found us, your age, etc., etc. So we created this survey. It's completely anonymous. In fact, the survey won't even ask you for your email address or your name, and it should take around 5 minutes. It's on our website. So if you go to shamelesssex.com, on the homepage it says, "Are you a listener? Take a survey here." We would love if you would do this for us. If you are a fan and you truly love us, please go and take the survey on our website, shamelesssex.com. Shouldn't take you much time. And that way we can know who we're talking to, and then we could speak to you in a more efficient way. And there's a coupon code at the end. If you do the survey, you get 25% off at Pure Pleasure. At purepleasureshop.com. So if you complete the survey, it'll give you a confirmation screen with that coupon code. So there's a little gift there as well. But even if you don't want to go shopping at Pure Pleasure, please do the survey if you're a listener, because that will really, 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 really help us, because we have no idea how else to figure out who you are.
And we have 2 other pieces of news. The first one is we have 5 stars on iTunes and 40 reviews. So
Woo!
if you could be so kind, write us a review on iTunes. It helps kind of build our profile and get us out there. And remember, this is a passion project for us. We don't get paid. We just want to give you the information. And the second bit of news is that we're now on Spotify. Ooh. So if you have folks that aren't in iTunes that you know would benefit from Shameless Sex, give them the Spotify info. Or if they don't like Spotify, we have Google Play. What else do we have?
All the things.
All of them.
YouTube?
YouTube.
Yeah.
We're going to have a YouTube channel, so you can see Amy and I in person if you want to.
Yeah.
Personally on video.
She looks real good.
I put on makeup for all the things.
All the things. She's pretty good. She's ripped too. Oh, by the way, last night at the party, they had a stripper pole, and April is not your average stripper dancer. What she does is she puts her hands up on the pole, and then what do you do? Tell us what you do. It's pretty
I
badass.
call it the wind's blowing in from the west, so I just basically leverage my arms and stick my legs straight out, and then I kick my legs around. Basically like a flagpole dance.
She's just flexing her muscles, and everyone's like, "What?"
And when I really party, I do it on tall humans.
I've seen her do that. Usually it's a fail, but she tries. She tries her best. Okay, so let's dive on in. So we have this really, really special guest, as I said, and this is a dear friend of mine who I met a long time ago, once upon a time. Can I tell how I met? I met him in a unicorn costume. Oh, there he is. Cory Caprista. Remember I called you Caprista? Cory Caprista.
Hola, hola.
Hola. So Cory is a human performance coach. And he also did the somatic sex and relationship coaching training with me. And so he has done many things. But Cory, tell us about you. What is a human performance coach?
Yeah, that's a great question because that title, what does that even mean, right?
Yeah.
Well, the idea is that what I do is help people perform better in the areas of life that are important to them. And what that ends up being for me is I spend my time working on two key areas. You could break out life into basically four areas of focus. If you wanted to be really simple, you think about work, love, family, and play. And so I really focus on work and then the love area. So I do a lot of executive coaching and corporate performance coaching with people who want to be better managers, better executives, make their companies and organizations run better, get that promotion, switch careers. And then I also do a similar thing with people looking for, looking to have a better love life. And the idea is basically people need to have clear dreams that are inspiring to them, and then they need to figure out how to actually realize those dreams. And we all have our own things that we're really good at and our own things that we're really challenged by. So in the area of love, for example, it's like, well, what kind of relationships do you want? And what is stopping you from getting there? And a human performance coach, as you just named it, just someone who comes in with you and can help understand who you are, what you're doing, and ways to get you to where you want to go easier, faster, better. So that's what I do at the highest level. I have the sort of the luck of working with the top corporations in technology industry in San Francisco and here in LA, sort of like Silicon Valley and then Silicon Beach down here, and then get to work with some amazing people in their love lives as well on the more personal side. It's just kind of funny that those two things don't tend to go together. You know, people in the corporate world don't want to talk about their love life, and when you think about love life, you're like, I don't want to talk about work. But it's shocking how much is similar in terms of what people struggle with. It's like, there's a saying, how you do anything is how you do everything. And I really do find that. So sometimes I'll start coaching someone in the corporate world and we'll end up talking about their love life, or we'll talk about someone's love life and then end up talking about how they're struggling in the same areas of work. Because, number one area of any relationship, and really work and love is based on relationships, is communication. So that's sort of the thread that goes between all of them. And I find that some of the same tools really help people in different areas. You can just get a little bit more naughty and real sometimes when you're coaching someone privately on their love life than you can when you're doing a workshop of 20 people in corporate America.
I always hate that that I hear this from people where they're like, if your work life is going well, your personal life suffers, and then vice versa. If your personal life's going well, I've always tried to beat that scenario. Is that like something that you can help with? Can you help me with that, Cory? Can you help me with the balance?
Yeah, definitely. Pete, the sort of idea of like work-life balance is like this term we all talk about. It's kind of a myth. I mean, there are trade-offs, right? Like you only have a certain amount of time and energy and focus, but I tend to find that the people that are good at having clear visions and dreams, about communicating those visions and dreams, about acting on their commitments, upholding their commitments, going towards and realizing vision, it kind of plays in both. People tend to have the same skills in work and love. Some people just don't understand how to transfer those things. So there is sometimes like work life's going well, but I don't know how to actually bring the skills that I'm good at in the work area to my personal life, or vice versa. So sometimes there's blockers, but I don't think that, I think that's definitely a myth that you can't have both going well.
I agree, and I'm trying to fight that myth all the time. I'm like, my work life's going awesome, and so is my personal life. I'm trying. It's a job. It's about communication. And you mentioned radical honesty when we were first talking to you, and that's something that I also try to practice. And I think, Amy, you do as well, sometimes to a fault, right? And that's probably helping with. Does that help with the communication in the corporate world?
100%. I mean, radical honesty is at the basis of success, I think, in every area of life. And the biggest thing there is you have to be honest with yourself first. And I think that radical honesty with what you want, who you are, that's like the key. And then it can flow outward to others, and it needs to flow outward to others. But absolutely, radical honesty is the foundation, because people it's painful to look inside sometimes. I'm sure you ladies have found that in doing your own work or working with clients, either in going deep in yourself or helping other people get really honest, how it can be really challenging to do it. It's simple, but not so easy.
So how do you define radical honesty for our listeners if they've never heard of that term? What is radical honesty?
Yeah, radical honesty to me means being honest in ways that are going to be uncomfortable and stretch you. So there's sort of like the honesty we're all sort of willing to have at baseline, but kind of claiming an identity or a commitment to radical honesty means pushing yourself to ask yourself, what would being radically honest look like in this moment, in this situation? So one example of that would be like if you're, on a date with someone and you want to, move it to the next level, sort of the next phase. Are you willing to be, or what would be the way you would actually share what you actually want, what you're actually thinking, feeling? What would be radically honest? Actually sharing with them what your intentions are, rather than trying to just manage them or manipulate them into wanting what you want. So that would be one example of like asking yourself, what would radically honest be? So it's sort of like an ongoing inquiry and more of like a commitment or an identity to take on. And usually it means getting uncomfortable.
And would there also then, in that radical honesty in the dating world that you're talking about, not only sharing what your intentions are, but would another piece be sharing the feelings behind it? So maybe my intentions are, I think you're really attractive and I'd love to play with you or have sex with you. But then there's the deeper feeling piece of, and I'm feeling fear in asking you this, and adding that piece on and explaining the somatic piece. Is that a part of radical honesty?
It's such a, this is why it's fun to be a coach with people, is like you kind of come up with these high level frameworks, and then you have them actually just practice being radically honest with you, like in a role play scenario, and then you can see where the where the challenges are. So one thing that's really key about radical honesty is it's simple, but it's not necessarily easy, because the key of it is being eloquent. So having grace in your communication and eloquence does matter. So sometimes when we think we're being radically honest, what we're actually doing is sharing our lowest self, our fears, our anxieties. And that is actually puts a lot of burden on the other person, to create space for that and be able to process that and keep it sexy and playful. So sometimes it's good to share that. But my question for you, or for anyone who would be in that moment, is, are you sharing that from your highest self, or is that your lowest self you're allowing to sort of to be your voice in that moment? And my sort of question for people is, are you keeping it playful? Like, if we're talking about what you want, I want to be sexy, or, hey, I really love you and I'm really interested in like taking this relationship to the next level and sort of being more committed to each other. Are you taking that into too much seriousness, or are you taking that into not enough seriousness? And the question for me is like, is it staying playful and fun, or is it starting to really drag and get really heavy? Have you ever experienced that, Amy, in your...
I mean, I'm playful as fuck, so and so is April. But I know some people that have a hard time tapping into play, and then whether it's something that they shamed out of themselves in the past because play felt unsafe, or once they went into adulthood, there was the idea that you're not supposed to have this lightness or this sense of play too. So do you have any tips on how one could perhaps add a sense of play or lightness to their communication, to their relationships and connection?
Yeah, I would say the first piece is for people to start practicing what feels fun for them every day. So like learning how to live a life of fun and play, so that inside when you're feeling like something is fun and playful, or when you're doing it out of obligation or should or anxiety. So that's really going to help. And I think some people, especially in love, and I am one of these people. So one part of my story is one of the reasons I became so interested in this world of performance coaching in the love space is that, and in the workspace, honestly, was that I had really painful negative work experiences, and I had really painful negative love experiences or sex experiences. And the pain, I was always obsessed with relationships and girls and wanting to figure that world out, but I didn't always do it very well. So part of my challenge with that was using what I was calling playfulness, was actually a negative experience for me and the other person, because it was actually me trying to make jokes to cut my anxiety.
No, April.
I suffer from this, Cory.
Do you?
Oh, for sure. It's like it's my trigger. When I get triggered, I turn it into a joke. I'm getting better. I've been working really hard to be conscious of it because it comes from my childhood for sure. That's how my family deals with everything. If something's stressful, it's like a joke. Like I've laughed at a funeral. It's not cool, and not because I was happy. I just didn't know what else to do.
Well,
with my pain.
In the world of flirting too, I've had some clients in the past who wanted their partner to, the way that their partner was even just hitting on them, their partner that they were in love with and that they had been with for many months or a year or so, their partner didn't know how to initiate without going into this little kid space, like this young person space that was like kind of pinchy and tickly, and it just wasn't so, and it wasn't sexy. It wasn't exuding this adult confidence. And so there's a big distinction between like what you're talking about, the add a sense of play and a insecure sense of play as well. I think that's a good distinction.
Yeah, I think that is a defense mechanism for a lot of people, including me. That's when I'm really not grounded or feeling super uncomfortable. I'll like make a joke, and I can, now that I've been practicing this long enough, I can feel when I'm starting to make jokes out of anxiety to cut the tension versus out of play. And playfulness, you can be like, part of being playful doesn't mean necessarily being silly and goofy, although it can include that. But you can be being playful with being sort of like that debonair character, right? Putting on that character where you're being smooth and you're saying the right words and you got the wink going and you're really going into that sort of that space. Or maybe you're being a little bit more in your animal, like you got that leopard vibe. You're kind of stalking, and you know that you're doing it, and they know that you're doing it in a way. But even embodying that, if you do it with confidence, it can be playful, but it actually works. And so I think for people, what I tend to try to do with them when it comes to playfulness is have them feel the play out in the session or when you meet someone, and see what are the areas where it feels really good to play with them, even just in talking, or when do they doing it out of nervousness. And then the goal is to expand someone's range of play so that actually you can be playful in many more situations where before you didn't, or you weren't able to, you didn't have access to that. So we try to give them way more range on all the areas so it can stay playful and fun while not being stuck in one gear of like that goofy sort of like tickly pinchy, which we see a lot of especially with nice guys. That want it to be
nice guys. We love our nice guys.
They're the best. They have the best intentions, and they're the most interesting people.
Now, what do you mean by interesting? We've been trying to dissect interesting. Like everyone uses interesting for everything. Sometimes people are like, interesting choice of shoes you're wearing. Like that means that you don't like my shoes. So, but yes, I think that you're saying intriguing in this context.
Well, I would even say one thing that I think that is really important when it comes to radical honesty is some people actually have a hard time with radical honesty because what they're sharing is a self that is underdeveloped. So if you're not at a place where you're interesting, mature, secure, or loving, like you haven't done that work, there's something blocking that. Like there's some character you're playing or defense mechanism of like maybe being too smooth or like too cool for school. And what you would actually be sharing is kind of your lower self, then you might need to actually go and do the freaking work on yourself.
How does one do the work?
I mean, that's a lifetime thing.
They call you.
They call me, yeah, exactly, or you too.
Yes,
but
me too,
I think it's just looking at really doing an autopsy or an audit of what experiences are you actually having? How are you showing up? What are you saying or not saying? I know one thing for me I found was one key like negative trait that jumped out for me was I was using a lot of like middle school locker room talk to talk about sexuality, because that's how I had learned to talk about sex when I was in like middle school, because I wasn't having any and I wanted to seem cool. And so I had this sort of like very boyish, almost jock style communication around sex, even though I had matured my sexual perspective, my language hadn't. So I had to go do the work to start becoming more sophisticated in how I talked about it, because I basically sounded like a disgusting like bro. And so for every person, like what is your areas you need to do the work on? But if you're interesting and you've done the work, but you're just anxious or fearful or not confident, that's where we talk about just translating who you are out. But some people actually need to go back and do a little more foundational work so that what you're sharing is actually something of greater substance, that people are really going to want to connect with.
So it sounds like it's a lot of work on worthiness in general. The not enoughness, the too muchness, and all the stories and the shame that comes along with that. I'm thinking a lot of Brene Brown right now. I have one question for you in regards to radical honesty that I've always kind of wondered about. So Esther Perel, Esther Perel's work, she wrote Mating in Captivity and has a lot of really wonderful TED Talks, and she does a lot on infidelity and cheating. And she also talks about long-term relationships and how one of the things that kills desire, well, there's two things that kill desire and connection, is this idea of attachment and individuation. So when we're partnered, if we attach too heavily, meaning we're always by each other's side and we don't have any of our own personal life or any sense of separateness, that can kill desire because we just start to habituate to each other. We have less to share because we're just always together. And then on the other side of the spectrum is the individuation piece. So if one was to, or if partners were to have completely separate lives where they actually didn't connect a lot or didn't share very much at all, that one too would kill desire because it would kill connection. So she talks about this balance between the two, this perfect balance of separateness and togetherness, and to kind of uphold and keep the fire burning and the connection going. Now, my question with radical honesty and how this plays into relationship, what your opinion is, because Esther Perel suggests that we actually shouldn't share everything with our partner, that we should have some mystery. Now, this isn't like secrets and lies and all that stuff. I'm talking about just some stuff that's ours. And she says that that's actually, in her opinion, and this probably isn't an exact quote of how she says it, but my interpretation of what she says is that this is an important component of connection and relationship, is to have some of that, that this is mine and I'm going to keep this for myself, to keep that connection, keep a little mystery there, I guess. How does radical honesty play into that? Because I do know some folks who like to practice radical honesty in a relationship, meaning we tell each other we're honest about everything.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
And it's the opposite of what I did before, or do you even agree with that, Cory?
Yeah, I think that this is a huge, huge area to go deep on. So glad you brought it up. Radical honesty, from my perspective, does not mean telling everyone everything on your mind all the time.
That would be exhausting.
It's exhausting, and it leaves no room for mystery, and it kills there's like a vibe or a flow that happens. And I have a history of being an overtalker and oversharer, where I want to share everything on my mind and talk out a situation till it's dead. And what happens is it's dead at the end. And so what I coach people towards, and what I would say, is absolutely radical honesty means saying what needs to be said, or saying the thing that needs to sort of take the situation to the next level, or to open up a certain space with someone. But it's also knowing when to stop, knowing when to shut up, knowing when to let the air into the situation, let it breathe. And I see a lot of over talkers who they're orienting towards intimacy. They think that's the way that they're going to connect. That's the way that they show that they're a safe partner for people. And I think I especially see that at the beginning of relationships, and especially when it comes to trying for people out there dating and wanting to sort of move the connection from sort of getting to know you to the sort of the more intimate space, to the making out, and then all the way through sort of what I call like rounding the bases, right? Like we don't want to necessarily just round the bases from to first, second, third home as fast as possible, but at some point we tend to round the bases at some point. But so that communication around that, people tend to share too much. And you don't want to take the shine off yourself right at the start. You do want to let people know who you are and be clear about that, because there can be less heartbreak later, because if people project all over each other at the beginning. But if you tell too much, it's just going to kill it, and not give it a chance to actually to live. But April, I'm interested to hear you've moved from less sharing to more sharing. So I wonder I'm interested in what your path has been in that.
Well, previous relationships with my ex-husband, I tended things that were bothersome to me or things that I was insecure about. I would just be like, I need to get over it. It's okay. Like, I'm fine with this. I'm fine with this. And it ended up eventually. It wasn't the demise of our relationship, but it would build up inside of me, and it ended up just causing me a lot of pain because they were things that we probably could have worked through. But instead, I just decided that I needed to get over it. And it was various things of all different ends of the spectrum. And of course, there were cultural differences, but things that I probably now, being the April I am in this period of my life, I would definitely communicate much better in that part. Now, I think that sometimes my partner is like, you are over communicating sometimes. And I feel like I want to find a better balance of my previous way to communicate with my partner and the new way, just because I'm trying to get in touch with my vulnerabilities, and I'm trying to feel safe. So I constantly share my insecurities. And sometimes I think I can get better with the way I share. That's what I'm working on right now. And I was telling Amy the other day, I was trying to communicate something, and I ended up telling my partner that I need to lower my expectations of him. And I was like, whoa, wait a second, that's not what I meant. And he was like, what do you mean by this? So anyway, I feel like I need to get more in balance with how I communicate and not overshare, because Amy says you and I are very much alike, and I tend to overtalk and overshare. So, but that's part of, I think, the beauty in this podcast, because I am shameless about my life and open. But in my relationship, I do want to find that middle ground where I don't over communicate.
Yeah, the metaphor I have around this is sort of like you if you're like looking for oil, and I'm not an oil person, so I'm probably if anyone's out there is like in the oil industry, they're probably going to be like, no, this is not a good metaphor. But this is the way I think about it. It's like you're digging like holes and you're looking to strike oil. And my thought is, you got to dig holes, but once you strike the oil in the conversation, let that like flow and go, and don't keep digging deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. You're going to get yourself covered in oil afterwards.
That's a wonderful analogy. I love it. And I hate oil.
Yeah. So it's like radical honesty to me means making sure you say what needs to be said, but you don't say more than you need to. And every conversation is going to have a different depth you need to dig. You might find in one conversation around one area, let's say it's, let's say you're in sort of an open relationship and you need to bring up, time spent, how your partner is balancing their time between you and another partner. Well, you need to dig there. That might be digging a little bit deeper. And it might take a little bit longer to get through that conversation versus a conversation around like how someone texts you to make plans. Hey, the way that you're texting me makes me feel like you're not as into the plans as me. And for the other person, that's how they text, right? Mm-hmm. That conversation might not need to go as deep. And so it's feeling out, when have you gotten to that like the gold, the black gold, as it were, if we're talking about oil? Mm-hmm. And when could we then I talk about like flowing into that conversation and then flowing back out of it. And that's the playfulness. Having the conversation as long as the energy's there and it feels like it's productive, and knowing when to sort of roll back out of it before it starts really draining and dragging people down. So that's one key.
Right. And I think this is something that I've realized slowly. I mean, I'm in a newer relationship for sure, but I'm realizing, as you said, there's a time, like I don't need to keep and sometimes it's good to walk away from something and come back to it and reprocess it. And that's, I think, a beautiful synergy involved in that process. But I'm working on that. And I love your analogy, Cory. I think the oil, I'm going to think about this next time. Like, okay, I think I struck the oil I'm looking for. I'm good now. Let's move on.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that you said, the second thought that came up is asking yourself, am I sharing my anxiety or my hurt from a place of strength and vulnerability, or am I sharing it from a place of anxiety and hurt? And sometimes you can share the same thing. It's the same conversation, the same topic, but not embodying the anxiety or the hurt allows it to be a more productive conversation because you're in your place of vulnerability and strength. and you can talk about it rather than being in it at the time. Because one thing I found, because I am more, if we're similar, April, as a very anxious person in my past, and I'm working through my anxiety, our anxiety is exhausting on the people around us. It really is. And so there's a level of being supported by the people in your life, and there's a level of self-management that we need to take on responsibility for, so we don't burn out people with our anxieties. Because we don't want to just be and live our anxieties. We do want to talk about them and deal with them. But man, if we're in that all the time, people they just wear them out.
Yeah, and so what comes to mind for me if I were working with a client and trying to educate them on how to convey their fears and anxiety, or well, not anxiety, but just we'll say fears from a empowered place. And maybe you have different advice too, but mine would be to, before you just share that I'm terrified, I'm scared, I'm fearful, to actually sit with it for a little bit, not too long. Don't go hide under a rock for 8 days and let it build and so that you explode and you go into a worse place than you were to start, but to really sit with it and feel into it and to understand it and write about it and breathe into it and dissect it. And figure out what it is, where it's coming from. And most likely it's just coming from past stuff that's yours, your own stuff. Getting clear on that, finding out what it is that you need in those moments. What is it that you're desiring and what you're looking for? And then once you feel strong in that, conveying it from that place. And I'm wondering if you have some other tips on how one would be able to convey their fear in a empowered space versus their lower self space.
Yeah, Amy, I think that you nailed it. I think that's part of the reason that it's so important to spend some time with it. And I'm just going to add on and say, specificity of language is power. Specificity of language is power in this world. And so if you are not able to be specific in what you're thinking, feeling, what you want, then you're disempowering yourself and the conversation. So a lot of times what I would say is that time where you're sitting with it and journaling and meditating on it or just feeling into it, it gives you an opportunity to be specific with your language. And that gives your partner better access into what's actually going on. And then there's a lot less collateral damage as you interact on that. Because what you say does have a charge to it. It does matter. So one of the things we like to work on with clients or with people is helping them be more specific and helping them notice areas where they're not being specific to actually what they really feel, and they're using words that actually are damaging or hurtful in some way. They're triggering things, bringing things up that actually aren't productive. They're actually not in alignment with what they want to talk about. And one example of that is, when I'm in a sexual dynamic with someone, so we're in a sexual experience, there are times where I'm not feeling fully there, like I've actually gone away mentally, or my body is actually not turned on, right? Mm-hmm. So those two things happen quite a bit, and I think those are very normal. But in the past, I would use language, for example, that's like, "Oh, I'm not turned on right now," or "I'm not really here with you right now," and those have been it really makes people contract. And so two words that are actually more specific and I think have the better power to them are, I say now, I'm not feeling, if I'm not turned on instead of turned on, because that has so much social connotation to it, cultural connotation.
Like pointing your finger, like something about the other person.
Yeah, like you don't turn me on. People always wonder, am I turning my partner on? Am I sexy enough? I use the word activated. And my body is not feeling activated right now. So it's less about, I'm like reporting something that we can both work on together rather than it feeling like it's finger pointing. Or I'll tell someone if I'm not fully there, I say, I'm having a hard time being present right now.
Yeah, I use that one. I definitely use that one. Then the good old spanking knocks me back into place. I'm not present right now. Smack. All right, I'm here. Here I am. Yeah. Your little hair pull. Okay, cool.
Hello, Dolly.
Yeah, hello. Consensual though, everyone. It was consensual. I wanted that spanking. Yeah, no, I think those are that's important. The power of our words, and then here's the balance though. We don't want to be in our heads and constantly walking in eggshells. Am I saying the right thing? Am I saying it perfectly? And it seems like the message here really is to slow down so that we can speak with more intention and have more awareness of where things are coming from and speak from that place, as opposed to just being reactive, word vomit. I'm feeling this, and then, I want this. It really takes that slowing down, which April and I are both trying to do with our speech in general. It's so hard. We are so excited.
That makes three of us.
I know you're like, it's Cory. Everyone, I just want to let you all know that Cory's kind of the male version of us. And it's, he's if we had a third person to do the podcast with us, it would probably be Cory.
There's no higher compliment than I could receive than that.
It's good stuff. You're
I think that what you're saying is important. I think truth, it comes quickly, but it moves a little slower than our anxious brain sometimes, or our fear mind, or even our excitement mind can move so fast that it kind of bullies or bulldozes over the little bit slower truth. So like you said, it doesn't mean like obsessing over the words forever or taking 8 days to go into your shell. It's just slowing down a little bit. Even if it's in the moment, taking an extra 3 or 4 or 5 seconds to feel, okay, I feel what I'm feeling. What is that actually about? What does it actually mean? Or it could be taking a couple hours before you talk to your partner. So it's just that little bit of time to check in with yourself and feel into that sort of the truth that lives a little bit more in your chest and your belly than the one that's running through your head, because our mind can play tricks on us so easily. And then it does a lot of damage really quickly before we're like, oh shit, I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, you can't. Sometimes you say things you can't take it back, and then
I always create the stories of like what's not happening in my head. I'm like creating all sorts of stories, and then I'm like, wait, that's a story. Let's focus on what's actually happening. You talk about the stories, Amy, all the time. You're like, that's a good story you're telling yourself.
Yeah, see, you telling your stories over there. Let's talk about this before you create your stories. Yeah, it's the way the mind works. That thing is always throwing me for a loop, creating its elaborate things. I feel like there's a level of clarity that we can give our listeners here, on, because some people might be like, okay, so what can I share and what can't I share? What should I share and what shouldn't I share? And to be a little more clear in that, when I was talking about Esther Perel and what she's suggesting, again, it's not a withholding of yourself. It's not, I'm going to keep this a secret because I want to hide this from my partner. It's I want to say, like, not picking your battles, because that sounds like that's all about arguments, but being more selective and more refined in what you share, and not feeling like you have to throw everything out on the table. One thing I'll share that's personal for myself is, so my partner, when we would not see each other even if it's just for a day, and we would get together at the end of the day, he used to do this thing where he would tell me every single thing that happened, and like a play of his life, of that day, or the last couple of days. I did this, and I went this, and I saw this person, we did this, and this. For me, I always felt, to a certain degree, that I was curious, I was very interested, and I felt like it was a little bit of an unloading, and I wanted to know a lot of what he was doing, and it just felt like a lot of information for me to take in. And it was just kind of the things. I went here, I saw this person said this. It didn't have all the, what I was wanting was the feelings, the emotions, the stuff that comes from the simple question of how are you, or how was your day, but in a more, in a deeper way, not just, it was good, it was cool. So I think that it's a different degree of being more refined in what we share with our partner. What are the nuggets here? Kind of like when in ceremony, right? When I go to ceremony and we do share circles at the end, and everyone gets to go around and share what they just experienced in their 24 hours of work in that ceremony. I'm specifically talking about with ayahuasca work. And some people who are new, they just share. So then I went this, and then I saw this, and then this guy was here in my vision, and they share for 45 minutes. You're just talking to people as if they're your journal, and they're not. Your partner isn't, your friend isn't, your colleague is not there for you to just like spout off everything that is on your mind. What they want to hear and what they want to know are the nuggets. Like what's really important to you? What is moving you? What what's really happening for you here, and not just the play by play. And I guess I don't know if you have more that you want to add to that, Cory, but feeling more like that's kind of what I was trying to convey with it, what Esther Perel was saying.
I think you nailed it. People don't stop wanting to be delighted in their day and in their life because they become your partner. And so the unloading, like emptying your clip and your full arsenal on someone to like be complete and do that, it's too much, I think. And what I think Esther Perel is really getting at, and what you're getting at, I'll go back to playfulness. It's about cultivating a dynamic that feels fun and playful and sexy, and having those. It's focused on the nuggets and the delightful things, telling the story or the key emotion, something that's going to be energizing or delightful. That's what you got to focus on, because people want your best. And I think I used to be that unloader, because I thought that's what you were supposed to do. People are like, how was your day? And I would just be like, oh, I guess I'm supposed to tell them everything. That's what intimacy means. That's what real connection means. And I would be in the middle of doing it, and I'd be exhausting myself. I'd be bored with myself. So if you ever catch yourself kind of bored or exhausted with yourself, just stop right there and pivot. And I think some people notice that they're going on too long, and they'll be like, oh, I'm sorry for telling you such a long story. And the other people usually won't tell you like to stop, or that you're like boring them or you're exhausting them. They'll just often move away, or the energy in your dynamic will start to wane. Like, you have to pay attention to people's signals, because it's really hard to tell people things like that. So people often won't tell you, or they'll tell you in a subtle way. So it's really up for you to know what your dream or your vision is. And that's where a lot of people fail, I think, is they don't have a clear vision of what they're aiming at. Yeah. And I think what you're saying, Amy, is
social cues too.
Yes. Sorry. Well, go ahead.
Well, I think we talked about this, the different levels of listening too. I think this is a good little segue of that too, because social cues are a part of that. Is, if we're doing level 1 listening, I'm just hearing what you're saying and relating it to my own personal story. And if I'm a level 2 listener, I'm really hearing what you're saying and actually connecting with you and engaging with you. And then level 3 would be I'm actually reading your body language, and also not only hearing the words that you're saying, but picking up on the emotions behind it, and empathizing with that part of you. And most people most people are hanging out in 1 most of the time, and going back from 1 to 2. And once we can learn to recognize, that's what I do these days when I'm listening to someone and I hear my own stories in my head. I tell in my head, I'm like, I'm stuck in level 1 listening right now. And just bringing that awareness to it can pull me out of it, and I can step into level 2 and really hear that person, and then hopefully level 3 and pay attention to what's going on there, so I can be aware. Is this too much information? Are we connected? Are they genuinely interested? Or is this a topic that is feeling a little too edgy for them, or whatever it is? It just is a different form of awareness.
It's so important. And I think some people, it's getting a little bit more on like the mindfulness of like what you're currently doing. I think that's why any kind of mindfulness practice, whether it's meditation or yoga, or sometimes psychedelics for people can really work. But getting some distance between the subject and the object, meaning the subject being your consciousness, and the objects being your thoughts, your feelings, your sensations, your ideas, your stories, so that you're not completely collapsed with those things. And you can actually pick and choose from the flow of thoughts and emotions and sensations to share, rather than thinking that you are those things. You are not those things. You experience those things. You can see those things. So people that I think can get some distance on that, they can watch themselves a little bit and like adjust, rather than being like, this is just who I am.
This is all really useful. I know our listeners love hearing about relationships, and I think the listening, I don't know if we have any references for listening, but I think that is a really key point for people to take home with them. If you've ever been told that you are not a great listener, pay attention to that.
And also tap into the social cues. Like, I've always been good at that. When I know I'm talking too much, I'm like, oh, I'm losing them. I'm like, okay, just stop. Let's take a minute.
Bringing some more awareness and slowing down. And it's a practice. It's all a practice. Yeah, you can always ask questions too. That's a good point of, are you enjoying this conversation? Is this something you're interested in talking about? Because we can change the subject.
Would you like me to stop?
Yes.
Do you relate, when you talked about the 4 components of your work, and like it was love, work, obviously, what were the other 2?
family and play.
Family and play. Do you filter sex into like the love or the play part of that equation?
I think it can be both, but I think most people sex will fall into the love. It's pretty foundational, and it goes into that love category pretty deeply.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Or maybe it's a fifth one.
Ooh, maybe it's its own thing. Sexa.
Yeah, I definitely put the A at the end when I write it out for my clients.
Awesome, I like it. So I want to ask you a question, a personal question. It's not going to be too personal, not like asking you about the sex that you've been having or any of that jazz. But I think our listeners, they've enjoyed past episodes when men have talked about their journey to be a better partner, better lover. I'm curious if you have any tips of what's really, really helped you on your journey to be the best, most awesome sexual self, or person to show up for your partners that you, whether it's in a casual relationship or a deep relationship. Do you have any tips for our listeners of what has served you in your journey?
Yeah, I have lots of thoughts on this, but I'll start with understanding gender dynamics. And I think that it's a very hot topic. It's kind of a loaded topic, but it's worth speaking about. It's the thing that probably changed my interactions the most. And when we talk about gender dynamics or gender energy, it's not about sex. So you can be a woman and be more of a masculine energy. You could be a man and be more feminine. That's totally fine. But it's like, what are at the core are these masculine and feminine energies? Masculine is sort of the thing that is going towards. Often it is the one action. It has the vision. It's driving forward. It's the penetrator in a way, both maybe literally, but also energetically. You're sort of coming at and penetrating. And the feminine energy is receptive. It's opening. It's expressive radiance, and it's receiving. So that the dynamics between masculine and feminine, if you've never played with those, or you have heard a little bit but you haven't gone deep, I think that can make a huge difference. And David Deida, or Data, as I think how you say it, has a book called The Way of the Superior Man, and he's got some other ones called Blue Truth and things like that, where he talks a lot about gender dynamics. Now, I'm about to tell you why I don't agree with him fully, but his core conceits are really powerful. And for me, what I realized was, as I'm more masculine energy than feminine energy, and what I was living in was mostly in my feminine energy. And so I was getting into dynamics with women who were maybe more wanting to be more in their feminine, and I wasn't allowing them to be in the feminine because I didn't know how to embody my masculine. And so I had to go on a journey of learning about masculine energy and then embodying it and practicing it. And what it allowed for me was knowing how to go into one extreme or the other, going pretty far into my masculine or pretty far into my feminine. And the trick there was, in the journey of doing that, maybe I lost a little bit of my truth or my uniqueness, because I was playing the character or the role of masculine to figure out how to do that. Or if you're a woman, you might need to go and figure out how to be really feminine, so you understand how to play into that energy and that role. And that, after I went through that process, that created the ability to have polarity. So if I'm more in my masculine and someone's more in their feminine, I'm playing that role, there's going to be, just like with electricity, you have to have a sort of a negative and a positive charge. And the energy flow between those is where you get the power comes from, the energy flow between two poles. And so same thing here, you have to have two poles or polarity to have the attraction flowing. And so that was a huge place that I started. And I want to tell a little bit, I'll pause there, because I think you both probably have some thoughts on this, but I also have sort of like tips for how to not get stuck as you sort of embody those things.
Yeah, I really like that. It seems just what's such a theme, balance. Everything is a balance here. And so what I feel like I hear you saying is that this isn't related to our physical bodies, because anybody, regardless of sex or gender, can be in their masculine or their feminine. So it's actually more of like an energetic way of being, or and that we kind of travel all over there. But when it comes to love or sex or romantic relationships, that there is this dance, within this dance, we're kind of usually navigating where there's where all of those energies are there. When one person's strong in their feminine, the other one is strong in their masculine, and vice versa.
Absolutely. And, the truth of it is people who are more feminine identified energy wise, they want you to come to them and take control and bring it. And if you're sort of attracted, but you're not confident enough or don't know how to step into that energy, you have two people sort of in the receptive space, and there's no one to go into more of that forceful, direct, penetrative energy. And so there's not that polarity that happens. And, that was my experience in my past, was not having the confidence to step into that and the groundedness to step into that. And so there's a lot of situations that could have been beautiful and gone into a dynamic. I remember when I was, this is a really old story, but I would go camping every year with my family, and I had sort of my first love, my puppy love, when I was a teenager. And we really were into each other. And we got to a place where we're like laying in a tent alone, just the two of us on pillows, on like the same pillow, like inches from each other's face. And I was so anxious and afraid of making a move that we just stayed there almost like nose to nose for probably like 25 minutes. And then I just never made a move. Mm-hmm. And you could feel how disappointed she was. She was ready, so ready for me to make the move and to receive that. But I had to step in the energy, and I just didn't know how. And the pain and the confusion on her face and later, and also how that shifted the dynamic, was really, it still is like tattooed into my soul. And it took me many years after that to learn how to do it. But that shift to being able to take on that role when you need to is so important. But what I find when people step into this work, I just want to say this to anyone who is doing any sort of like masculine or feminine work, is often we have to go to more of an extreme to learn, and people end up so far in their masculine that they lose their natural balance. And so there's sort of a swing back to a more ratioed amount of masculine and feminine. And I would say for me, I'm probably 60% masculine, 40% feminine. So that's really important because it helps you actually maybe choose a reciprocal partner that's going to be able to play with you properly. So if you're naturally very, very masculine or very, very feminine, you probably want someone who's very feminine. Or if you're very feminine, you want someone who's very masculine. But if you're more balanced, you might want someone who's more balanced. And I've found that once I've been doing that, I've been pulling in partners who are more on the androgynous side, women who have a lot of masculine in their mix, even if they're probably more feminine on balance.
Yeah. I love that. I think we talked about that in a past podcast a little bit, but you just really broke it down in a very easy to understand way that was really, really well done. And I think that our listeners are going to love that nugget. So you said you had some tools. So we actually need to wrap it up in a moment. So do you have any last tools that you would like to share with our listeners that were in regards to this journey of yours to, I don't know if it was related to this piece about masculine and feminine, but to be your most awesome sexual being that you are.
Yes, totally. I would say that the first one that I see a lot with guys is spilling the energy. Get excited, you're into someone, and your energy is just pouring out of you all over the person. And it's an intense experience on the other end. It's a lot for them to handle. So I would just say for men to practice, especially, or masculine people, or even people who are just really excited. I think women are women. It's both. Actually, now I'm thinking about it. I've coached men and women on this. And a lot of women have a challenge with this, is learning to flirt with your eyes and containing your energy and trusting that a little goes a long way. A little bit of flirting and play and showing that will let someone know. And if they're interested, there's going to be sort of a circuit created where it will build naturally, rather than feeling like you have to really prove to them or show them that you're interested.
I like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, less is more, people. Less is more.
Except when you're a stripper pole.
Yeah, legs out, baby, legs out. And then I would say, honestly, get better. If you're not feeling super confident in your technique with touch and pressure and things, work on that, because then you'll feel very confident and there won't be that anxiety or nervousness when you go to actually bridge the connection physically. So if maybe take a massage course is something that I think is a really powerful tool, because you learn how to touch and listen to bodies sensationally. You listen to the sensations in your own body and the other bodies. And I think listening has been one of the key themes, right? So listening so much to signals physically is a big key. And so get better in your technique that will allow you to actually guide that experience. And then also listen to the signals that are coming from someone, whether they're interested or not. That's a huge one as well.
Mm-hmm. Note to self, people, and I really like that you're that this is your journey, and you identify as what you use he him pronouns, and you're saying that this applies to everyone, anyone, and everyone. I like that distinction. That this is something that if there's any truth here, regardless of your sex or gender, that this is speaking to you, then there's some really great tools here for you.
One more thing. Can I say one more thing?
Yes.
If you are not enjoying yourself in your sexual dynamic, if you're not laughing some of the time and like having these like open rolling experiences of like tumbling around and laughing and play, and then you can move into a sexier space, you can move into a loving space. Just remember to have sex in your love and love in your sex, and you can play with that ratio. I think that's like, just make it fun. And if it's not fun, have the confidence to pause and say, what's not working here? And it's a continual inquiry and a question. Ask yourself, what would make it fun right now? Do we need to go a little bit more into like lightening it up for a moment? Or do we need to take it a little bit heavier and deeper and darker and, a little bit of bossing each other around or role playing? Like, what does it need in that moment? Just be willing to ask yourself the question and get out of the train of whatever you're just, like it's just running down the tracks, or in that game of like what should I be doing? Get it out of here. Not welcome. So
that's everything we're preaching, Cory. Mic dropped. Perfect. So how can people find you, Cory?
You can find me at CoryCaprista.com. I'll be redoing my website soon, but for now you can find me there. And just for people to know.
Spell it.
Yeah, it's Cory Caprista, CoryCaprista.com. It's like a Capri Sun, but
oh, he's so delicious.
Squeeze from the top and bottom, please.
Please and thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, well, Cory, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. I think the listeners are going to love this episode. There's so much good information, packed full. And hopefully we'll see you soon in person, and you better bring that unicorn onesie. Otherwise, we won't recognize you.
Yeah, that's the only way we'll know who you are. And to our listeners, just a reminder that what we shared in the beginning, we do have a survey on our website that we'd love for you to take. It will really, really help us. So as this episode ends, I want you to stop where you are. If you're driving, pull over. And go to shamelesssex.com, and it's on our homepage. It says take a survey here. It should take you 5 minutes. It's anonymous. Please, please, please do it. It would really help us so we know who we're talking to, so we can better speak to you. And again, Cory, thank you. We love you. I love you. I can't wait to see you. We'll be in LA next month, and I really plan on spending as much time with you as possible because I can't get enough of you.
Likewise. Mwah to both of you. Ciao, bellas. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Cory. And thank you, listeners. We love you as well. And ciao for now.
Don't forget to head on over to our website at shamelesssex.com for more. And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use coupon code SHAMELESSPP in all caps at purepleasureshop.com.